right at the top, I've got the Carolina Hurricanes, you guys, in number one spot. Obviously, we're banged up in the playoffs and lost in a Game 7 series against the New York Rangers in the second round after winning a Game 7 against the Boston Bruins in round 1. And so they make some changes. Max Pacioretty and Dylan Coghlan come in for basically nothing from the Vegas Golden Knights. Pacioretty is obviously going to be injured for a little while, but he'll be a nice boost to that lineup when he gets back and healthy. Andre Kasha, Brent Burns, another big name this offseason that comes to Carolina, and Paul Stastny, a good veteran forward for depth as well. So I think the key for Carolina, guys, is that they just need to score more goals, and they just need to score more easy goals. And I know that was something that Rod Brind'Amour kind of alluded to after they lost in the playoffs, but this is a good team. They're a contender. They're a lot of fun to watch. They certainly work hard. And I like the Hurricanes to finish first in this division and maybe even win the President's Trophy this year as well. I've seen a lot of predictions in regards to that. So might be a bit of a reach for you guys, but I'm really high on Carolina. I've got them number one in the Metro. What do you guys think?
I guess I'm not paying enough attention or something, because I certainly don't have them winning the President's Trophy. And frankly, I don't even have them winning this division. I am pretty open for the first 5 spots here. I'll listen to either of you, and I'm willing to move some things around, but I currently have Carolina at number 2. I think that they really took a step back on their bread and butter, and that is their decor. It's certainly not what it used to be, and I'm really not in love with it anymore. I think, the top 4 is maybe still there. Who knows what Brent Burns will do in this new lineup. And then goaltending, Freddie Anderson, phenomenal year last year, but I just have to expect some sort of regression here. And, goalie voodoo, I guess I'll stick with that. Pacioretty isn't going to be playing until February, and then he'll probably be hurt by the end of March. I really hope he doesn't, knocking on wood here, but that just seems to be the way it's been for him. I like the forward depth. I really do. I think there are some weapons here that could blow up this season, but I'm just not in love with the backhand anymore. And for that reason, I'm going to knock them down 1 spot this year.
See, Case, I'm not really sure I understand where you're coming from with that, though, because I look at the back end and I just see, Tony DeAngelo is out. Brent Burns comes in, and I think that right there is almost an equal trade-off. The money the money doesn't really work there between the two, but that's not really what we're talking about. We're talking about the product on the ice, and I think they're very comparable there.
Ethan Bear gone, very high in the analytics last year on D pairings. Calvin DeHaan in on 2 of the top 10 worst D pairings in the league last year in Chicago. When I say the decor isn't what it used to be, I'm not necessarily saying the same as last year. I'm saying 2-3 years ago, this team in Nashville, it was who has the best decor? Let's figure it out. But I just don't think they're even in the conversation anymore. And obviously they still have some very solid players like Slavin. He's one of the best ones in the entire league. And then Shea and Pesci took a major step back last year. I don't know. I don't like the decor nearly as much as I used to.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. I think the fact that they were shopping Bear around, though, meant that he wasn't very valuable to them. So maybe bringing in a guy like DeHaan, he can play a different role there. And I think clearly it's about team fit as opposed to who has the higher ceiling or who's, better now in one certain aspect. Clearly Bear has more offensive capabilities, but, you might need something different in the top 6. I just look at this team and I think that their decor essentially stayed the same, because I think, your bottom pair isn't going to win or lose, a season for you. I think it's going to be your bread and butter, your top 4. And I think it's still pretty good. Burns coming in for DeAngelo, I think, like I said, again, is pretty much an even trade-off. Plus, Burns will be nicer to the guys in the room, I would imagine, too. So there's that. And then I look at their forward group, adding Pacioretty. Yeah, he won't play till January, February, some around that time. But he's a difference maker up front. And to get him for absolutely nothing, I think was incredible work by the GM here. And also adding Kasha, is some more depth scoring. Seth Jarvis is another year older. Paul Stastny, I think, is really good depth. And up front, really, who did they lose? Max Domi, who they acquired at the deadline, who played like 15 games for them and basically did nothing. Like, I just look at this team and I think in every aspect, they're at least as good as they were last year. And then goaltending, like, I won't even comment on, because Freddie Anderson was top 5 in Vezina voting last year. So can we expect that again? Who knows? Like, that's something that I'm not willing to put a lot of stock into. But in terms of forward and defense, I think the team looks really good. And I agree, Harp, that I think they could challenge for the President's Trophy this year.
That actually comes as a major shock to me. I'm not saying to knock this team down 4 spots here. I'm saying I think that there's one team in this league that's better than them, or in this division rather, and I just don't think they are as good as last year. I agree with a lot of your comments. I think that they got some holes and then they just refilled them, but I think that other teams were getting better, and this team is kind of staying the same, and in my opinion is getting worse on the back end.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. And then I guess, like, we can mention goaltending as well. Like, I said that Freddie was 4th in Vezina voting, and he finished 3rd in the entire league in goals saved above expected. Like you said, Case, we should expect that to regress maybe a little bit, maybe to career averages. But even then, he's about a top 10 goalie in the league. And Antti Ranta didn't have a fantastic year last year. Expect him to maybe regress in the other ways. So, to get better in the other direction there. So even if you're not relying on Freddie to win you those games, like, I think that's still a solid tandem. The problem is, like, health for those two guys. So if they can stay healthy, I think they're in great shape. I mean, I just don't see them getting much worse. Case, who do you think is better in this division? I think I know who you're going to say, but like, let's hear it.
Have you ever seen The Accountant, Ben Affleck, where basically he goes back to his room and he punishes himself often, and basically turns up screamo music as loud as he can, and then takes this metal rod and rubs it on his shins as hard as he can to kind of give himself pain? Mm-hmm. I'm going to be doing that tonight, because I'm about to say that I think the New York Rangers are better than this team.
I knew it. That team right there.
Yeah, that team right there. And I just absolutely hate saying that. Talk about a decor getting substantially better just through age, just through getting better. Like, Hunter Miller's great, Jacob Trouba, that pairing, they locked it in, and it was like, take that decision away from the coach now. That's a pairing. And then on top of that, you have Lindgren and Fox. Fox is quickly becoming has solidified himself as a top 5 defenseman in this league now. And then Zach Jones and Braden Schneider just getting experience and getting better. I love the decor. And then goaltending tandem. This goaltending tandem is better than Carolina's. Literally, Shesterkin alone is making this tandem better than Carolina's. And then on top of that, like you've mentioned a million times, that this team just needs to start playing their young guys. Well, that opportunity is coming, and they're just going to continue to get better. I know I'll take this one away from you before you even get to it, just to like belittle your argument a little bit. Chris Kreider is not going to be nearly the man he was last year, but obviously this team has shown that their power play is lethal, and that's why Kreider had a bajillion goals last year. And they have a few studs who can carry this offense. I think that they're the better team out of the two.
I think they're pretty good as well. Like when I look at the two teams, I can see an argument for either one being at the number 1 spot. I just think that, maybe there could be some more regression on the Rangers than we think. But at the same time, going the other way, Lafreniere is only going to get better. And I've been saying forever that he needs to play more. Well, finally, in training camp, he's been getting reps in the top 6 consistently, which is a good thing. Kakko and Hedel, that's not the case. They've still been playing, roughly third line minutes in training camp. And, that was the kid line last year. It might be broken up, might be, staying the same this year. But I like this team a lot, Case. I'm not saying that they're even a step behind Carolina. I think they're in the same tier, to be honest here. Like I am really high on both teams. I just look at Carolina and I think, they haven't really changed or got worse, in my opinion, in any regard, and they've only gotten better. Whereas New York, their leading goal scorer was Chris Kreider, like we mentioned. He's clearly not going to be the same player. And then they lost Ryan Strome as well, which I think is an important loss for that team. He played a lot of minutes and he played, he was a driver on that line. So, they replaced him with Trocheck. We'll see how he can do. It's kind of funny, actually, that, Trocheck was a Hurricane not that long ago. Now we're talking about these two teams going head to head. But listen, I can see an argument for either one, but the way I have it and the way it shakes out right now is Carolina at number 1, New York at number 2, and we'll have to see how that shakes out in the season.
You can put Carolina at number 1, but keep the President Trophy's name out your mouth, because I think that's a little ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to score more this year, which was like one of the problems, right? And
it's one of the problems for this team is that they have to play in the Metro Division, and then they have to play in the East on top of that.
Yeah.
How are you going to win I don't know how they're going to win the President's Trophy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, we're talking about these two teams here. Carolina finished 3rd last year. New York finished 7th. Carolina had 116 points. New York had 110. We're talking about 6 points difference here. Like that could be a road trip. That could be a Western road trip.
That could be Max Pacioretty not playing until after the All-Star break.
That could be it. That's right. I mean, yeah, fair enough. I mean, injuries happen, right? Teams have to overcome that. But what do you want to say? You've been wanting to jump in here for a while.
Yeah, no, honestly, I really don't think the President's Trophy comment about the Canes is out of the question. I really don't think so. Like they had an outside shot at it last year, and this team is so good in the analytics department. Number 1 in dump-ins, number 1 in puck retrievals. They've only gotten better up front, and I like their back end. Ethan Bear is still there. Calvin DeHaan for $850K, and Dylan Coughlin as well is a good player. He was basically added as a sweetener with Max Pacioretty in that trade with Vegas. So anyway, but a thought on the Rangers quickly. I have the Rangers in number 2 as well. Obviously, a huge step forward for them last year. Chris Drury's done a great job. They made it to the Final Four before losing to the Tampa Bay Lightning, and they didn't really need to change much. I don't know how well that Trocheck deal is going to age. I did like Ryan Strome there, and I'm kind of surprised that they didn't bring him back, but this is a good team. They're young. They're only going to get better. I still have a little bit of concern with the back end just because it is still so young as far as when you get past the top 4. Like there might be some growing pains this year for Jones and for Schneider. So who knows? And also the guy behind Igor Shesterkin is Yarrow Halak, who's not getting any younger, really struggled in Vancouver, and so I just don't know about that. But this is a good hockey team. There's no question about it. They've got that nice mix of veteran presence and youth, and I really like the Rangers. I just can't put them quite past Carolina in this division.
Just quick comment. They're actively shopping Ethan Bear. That's why I've pretty much counted him out of this team, because I don't expect him to be there much longer. I've conceded here. You can put Carolina higher. I really hope I'm wrong, because I just don't want the Rangers to be good. So I'm fine with that. I don't know. It's a scary team, and that's just something I don't like.
Well, it's weird when I look at these two teams, because I look at the Rangers and I really can't spot many problems with the team. So like I hear you when you're like, okay, maybe they should be put in the number 1 spot here in the division. I hear you, because even their goaltending, like, Georgiev was terrible last year for this team, and Halak is just a new face. So, maybe he'll be better, maybe he won't. I personally think he'll be a better fit there, because he won't be disgruntled, because he knows his role as a backup, as opposed to Georgiev, who has wanted to be a starter since he's been in New York, and now maybe this year he will be in Colorado, or at least a tandem goalie. But like, last year, how do you take Shesterkin out of the net? Like, it's just not feasible. Like, he was that good. So, like, I look at this team case and I just keep saying to myself, they're really, really good. And especially if their younger players take a step. So I hear the argument. I just think the way it shakes out for me is Carolina 1, New York 2, but I could see either one happening.
It'll be interesting to see as well how Vitaly Kravtsov, the former first-round pick, fits into this lineup. He's on a one-year deal at a little over $800,000, and that could be a really good value contract for this season for the Rangers. He's going to get an opportunity, right, with their lack of cap space and the deals that they're going to have to do coming down the pipe here with Lafreniere and others. So that's a guy I'll be watching on New York.
Yeah, I really hope he can navigate the noise, because it must be frustrating to be a player that's just constantly linked to trades. And, how are we going to bring in Patrick Kane? Like, Kravtsov's a big piece of this, and then we'll have to throw in Schneider and this and that. It's like always Kravtsov. So it's like, fire him. Like, you just, I don't know how they do it.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, too, just a little side note before we move on from the Rangers. Excellent return for Niels Lundqvist.
Oh, yeah.
From the Dallas Stars. Am I right? A first and a fourth rounder for him.
For a team who had zero leverage in that transaction, they made out like gangbusters. Like that,
they did.
Like, the player is probably worth about that. Like maybe a later first round pick. And throwing an extra pick on top, that was just money in the bank. But like, for a team who had zero leverage, I couldn't believe they got that.